Leeds, Leeds, Leeds. What is happening? Welcome to Working Hours, an oral history podcast about a place called Leeds, a time called now, and an activity called work. Working Hours wants to record 1,000 loiners over the course of this, the most important decade in the history of the human species, and ask them about what they do all day and hear how they feel about it. My name is Simon, and this is all my fault. My mission here is to try to map out what my city, Leeds, a city that has declared a climate emergency, did during humanity's biggest emergency. On Working Hours, we hear how loiners have, are, and will be coping with our multiple and expanding crises during their day-to-day working hours. Can we turn things around? We'll find out. To tell this story, I need loiners like you, dear listener. I need people in Leeds or people from Leeds to come on this podcast and just tell me what they do all day and let me record how this affects us. Thank you for listening. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Right. Okay. That's a very interesting question, and thanks for asking. When I was growing up, I think it wasn't much about what I wanted to be. I think it was more about what my parents expected me to be. And in those days, there were the top 3 career paths, choices, which were, practical for every young star to want to aspire to get into. And that's being a medical doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. Mm-hmm. So when I was growing up, I grew up in Nigeria for, the best part of my youth. And it wasn't much of a choice. I think in those days, you just align with that path. And it wasn't a suggestion, it was a life plan. I guess Pedi would also say a bit about that. So either you aspire to become a medical doctor or an engineer or a lawyer. Those are the top 3, career, choices that you've got. And we all aligned with that path. Everyone wants to be the best. You want your parents to be called, in Nigerian context, Mama Doctor. That's what we call it. Or Mama Engineer or Mama Lawyer. So we all wanted that part, and it was just one that everyone wanted to go to. So that was the path I had to walk through, and coincidentally, it was one I prepared for. So you write exams for for you to get into that path, and I eventually became an engineer along the line. So that is my journey, so to say.
Okay. And Pedi, are you seconding that motion? Was it the same, or was it?
I mean, I can third it, fourth it, whatever, but it was pretty much similar. But mine was a bit different. It was the same context, to be fair, because I grew up in Nigeria as well. But for whatever reason, I wanted a job where I would have a car. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I think I had read a book that, for whatever reason, used the word chauffeur or chauffeured. And so I said I wanted a chauffeur-driven car. Can you imagine? That was the dream for me, whatever that meant. So I just wanted that. But of course, when it came to writing exams and all that, I didn't go into the sciences. And so since I wasn't in the sciences and it wouldn't be doctor or engineer, the next best thing was lawyer. And that's where I ended up. I ended up as a lawyer, qualified as a barrister and solicitor. But I was also driven by I think when I ended up studying the arts, so I was in the arts class, for whatever reason, I started thinking, lawyers had this thing about them, where there's something we say in pidgin English, waiting lawyers they do. So essentially, what do lawyers do? So it's almost like they're overpriced. They're just there to make trouble or cause trouble, and then they make money off people. So there was this stereotype, as it were. But I thought it could be different. And so for me, it was really about trying to understand how I could be a lawyer, but a lawyer that was what the money people were paying, if that makes sense. And I also had this thing for just exploring law as a way of advancing change. because in the law schools, there are different schools of thought about what law means. And so I was drawn to the bit that defines law as an instrument for social change. And I think, yeah, that was it for me.
You're listening to Series 5, Episode 45, and to my guests Bunmi Owolabi and Dr. Pedi Obani. This is another Squadcast interview recorded on the 23rd of December, 2024. Hello, listener. In this compelling episode, we explore the transformative work of AfriKindness, a charity dedicated to advocating for kindness, cultural understanding, and racial harmony among children and young people. Founders Bunmi and Pedi share their journeys, emphasizing the importance of empowering families and addressing complex racial challenges through community engagement, co-production, and educational initiatives. They also discuss the organization's rapid growth, the impact of COVID-19 on their mission, and the crucial role of social media in amplifying their message and reaching a global audience. Right, let's do this. Episode 155 of Working Hours with Bunmi Owolabi and Dr. Pedi Obani. Excellent. So we've got lawyer, engineer. It's not what you're doing now, though, is it? So let's jump in. I'll start with you again, Bunmi. What is it that you're doing now?
Well, I'm a chemical engineer as of now, and I work with an organization called BOC. So as a chemical engineer, and like I mentioned earlier, I had to go through that whole route and that part, and it's one that I've enjoyed. When I was much younger, I enjoyed chemistry a lot as part of the sciences, and also enjoyed a bit of maths as well. So I went through that whole route, did chemistry, and then went further into chemical engineering. So I work as a production engineer at the moment.
And Pedi, what are you doing at the moment?
Well, I didn't end up studying medicine, but I got a PhD. And so we have a running joke in the family. My cousins who are doctors, I like to tell them when I'm a doctor as well, and they're like, "No, you're not a real doctor. We are the doctors, and you're not." But so yeah, I teach law at the university. I'm an associate professor of law at the University of Bradford.
And you're both involved with an organization that we're here to not entirely talk about, but the reason that we're all here. So, so do you want to mention AfriKindness and what that is and what that does? So again, Bunmi, I'll start with you on this.
Right. Thank you very much for that. Yes, AfriKindness is, we are a registered charity organization dedicated to advocating for kindness, cultural understanding, and racial harmony, particularly among children and young people. We are in a diverse society, multicultural society, and one of the key challenges sometimes that children or young people do have is how to really get into understanding who they are. That's self-awareness, especially in a multicultural setting. And you have, I think, even as adults, we sometimes question who we are. Sometimes, in terms of our identity, where do I fit in? Who am I really? Sometimes those questions could be very glaring. It could be one that you internalize yourself and keep asking yourself as a person. And it could be one that, people ask and challenge you about. Who are you? Where are you from? And sometimes it's a mixed feeling for young people who sometimes based on society, based on stereotypes, negativity within the society. Sometimes it could be one that could have an adverse effect on how children perceive or see themselves. So one of the issues that we're trying to address is the issues around racial bullying, complex racial identity crisis in young people. Sometimes young people internalize these issues and it affects their mental well-being, their emotional well-being. It affects their social interaction in schools. And sometimes it leads to the issues around bullying, racial bullying in schools, which we all know that sometimes it has huge statistics when it comes to diverse communities. So we do a lot in terms of educational training, and support for parents to be able to support their young people to become the best version of themselves, irrespective of wherever they're from. We do a lot in terms of mentoring and workshops for young people themselves to, build resilience, to help them understand, who they are, that self-awareness, that journey, and empowering them to become, who really they want to be. And we also work with schools as well to address the issues around racial bullying, address the issues around discrimination, and create that inclusive society that we all want to see. So that's really what AfriKindness stands for. And children and young people is at the forefront of what we do. And we only support parents and schools to ensure that all these lingering issues are addressed and that children and young people thrive. And they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel valued, and that we're shaping a world of equity and compassion that we all want. So that's, in a nutshell. If you leave me to it, I can talk forever. I guess Pedi knows that. Pedi might want to add one or two things.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
no, thank you. I think Bunmi has put it really nicely. And the only thing I would add is that it's kindness to themselves. So kindness to yourself as a young person. It's kindness to others around you, but even beyond your immediate environment. And it's also kindness to the natural environments which we find ourselves in. So we try to build on all of those. The other thing we also do is community empowerment, because we think that the community itself needs to be resilient and be able to provide good role models, but also a good support system for the children and young people within that community. So we're working really closely with community leaders in both non-faith-based communities, but also faith-based communities as well, just as a way of strengthening the networks which those children and young people can rely on as they navigate through life.
So as we go through the rest of the interview, I'm going to leave it to you to feel free, like how you want to answer the questions. So if you want to answer it from a pure AfriKindness perspective or from your own individual, sort of discrete areas of work, feel free to do that. I'm going to let you sort of decide that, pick and choose as we go. So I'll move us into the next question, the how did you get into it question. So I'm going to start with you this time, Pedi. So how did you get into it? And as I say, either one, so you can do the lawyer side, or you can do the AfriKindness side, or you can do both. Up to you.
Okay, I'll start with the AfriKindness side. So how did I get into it? I think I had a word with Bunmi and that was it. She doesn't leave you much of a choice, I must say. No, but seriously, so one of the trustees of AfriKindness reached out to me, a very good friend, and he said, "Oh, there's this charity and they need a parent team lead. I know you're very busy, but it's really easy work. You don't have to do much, just join." But I think he lied on that one. He lied. But he told me it's what you would love to do. And I think he was right about that one. I've never regretted doing it. It's sometimes demanding, but beyond being demanding, it's sometimes tasking, just seeing the need that there is. For me, I think that's the main thing, beyond the time it takes, but just seeing the amount of demand that's out there, the children, the families, the young people who really need this service, and even just knowing that we can't do as much as we should be doing because AfriKindness is just run by volunteers predominantly. So yeah, that was it. I was asked by this friend of mine, and I had a conversation with Bunmi as the CEO, and I thought, well, sure, why not? I'll give it a try and see what happens. And it really brings together my key interest, I must say. So within AfriKindness, I've been able to find a way of connecting my interest for the environment, my interest for human rights and social justice, my interest for connecting with the cultural side of things. And so it's been a win-win if you ask me.
I guess it ticks a lot of boxes, and as well, the crusading lawyer side of things, that doesn't always work out, does it? So it's nice to know that you can sort of directly impact people as well without, having to go through that process. Obviously, you get wins as well there, but, the day-to-day of working is frustrating, isn't it?
It is. But I think with doing this for AfriKindness, it's really interesting because I practiced as a barrister solicitor for a bit, and then I went on to do a master's, and I did my master's in law and sustainability. So I was really just trying to understand how, again, part of this question of how can law make a real change in a society.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time I did the master's, sustainable development was still fairly new, I would say. I think it was the only course I found that really brought the two together, law and sustainable development, and that was at the University of Aberdeen.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did that course, it was about how do we balance economic growth, but also social development, social justice, as well as environmental sustainability. Those were the three key things.
Mm-hmm.
And after the master's, I went into a PhD, and then I decided to go into academia full time. And for me, being in academia, it was really just being able to contribute to the conversations,
Mm-hmm.
but also firsthand have those conversations with the people who are shaping the future.
Mm.
Because it's really powerful when I go into the classroom and I just see young people. For instance, especially the undergraduates, they're coming in the first year, fresh from, high school or whatever, and then they're asking you all these questions. And then 3 years down the road, they're graduated.
Mm.
They've become qualified, as at least they've got their first degrees, and then they choose what they want to do next. But I think it's a really good and invaluable opportunity that one gets every day in having those interactions with young people to just try and do something different,
Mm.
beyond the academic, pass this test, do this assessment and all that, but just provide them with, I don't want to say a role model, but provide them with that space and that support system
Mm-hmm.
where they can learn a bit more than just academics. And I think in Bradford, the School of Law, we also do it quite differently from other law schools. I can't speak for all law schools, but for our law school and for our university, social mobility is really important.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of the things we try to instill in both the teaching and the extracurricular activities as well. And so linked to AfriKindness, I think it's pretty much the same, just having that opportunity to do something more than the academics. And in my day job, the kinds of things I like to talk about are environmental law, climate change, human rights, and things like law and gender. So all around equity, justice, inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And so with AfriKindness, it's just the gifts because I'm pretty much doing the same thing, but on a different platform and with a different audience. So I
Mm.
would say it's a win-win.
Excellent. Okay, so Bunmi, how did you get into it?
Do you want me to start with my story? Because it's going to take the whole day. Right. Okay.
Maybe the cliff notes.
Right. Yeah. I think, how did I get into it? It started, I'm a mom of two, and I've got two lovely kids who are, in their teen years at the moment. And one of the issues I think as a parent, from a diverse community that often happens, and not just myself, I think I speak for a lot of parents from diverse communities, that fear of what's going to happen to your child while in school as they grow up. You know the issues around racism and the impact on young people and their mental health, on their self-esteem, on their confidence in itself. And I think it boils down to parents as well. So a lot of parents, we do parent out of fear. And during my course of research also, I also realized that is also, backed up from a point of research that parents from diverse communities often, parents from the point of fear. And when you are in that zone where you are parenting out of fear, it also boils down to how your young people would see and feel empowered, in their journey in life. And so AfriKindness was born actually out of a deep desire to address these issues. And I found myself in that situation, having two kids and having engaged a couple of parents. And when I, just from an informal conversation, engaged some parents within my community, I realized that we all had that whole set of issues and fear, and it was one that I thought to myself, okay, rather than live in this situation, why don't we, do something about it? So it was really, I found myself, engaging parents and trying to support young people. One of the young people we supported, who did a project and went through a journey of self-awareness. We saw that whole transformation of where that child was, living in a zone of fear, having self-confidence issues, having low self-esteem, having an impact on his education and all. And we saw that journey, how that child, went through that whole process of, self-awareness, and to where that child, confidently could speak, could, challenge things, and felt a bit empowered. And we saw that whole transformation and thought, okay, this is good, and this is having a positive impact on young people, not just on young people, on family, on the entire family, as it were. And I got myself into that zone. And what started as a small idea of we parents coming together to support our young people, eventually, has grown into a movement of empowering families, empowering not just families, even educators and communities, like Pedi said, to build a future where every child feels valued, heard, and celebrated. So in a way, I started, AfriKindness started at the very beginning, from conversations with parents, and I was in that whole conversation, and it's grown over the years. I think we're up to 2 years now, 2 years plus, and it's grown over the years, making that needed impact. And I've been all through that journey, supporting parents, having conversations, understanding the real challenges that parents have, understanding the challenges with children when it comes to, race, and understanding those complex challenges, and supporting those young people to, to address those unique challenges and have that sense of identity and belonging. Yeah, so that's the journey for me, and how I got myself into AfriKindness, really.
And you're Leeds based, but you look at the whole country, don't you?
Yes, so when we started, from Leeds. We had a group of parents that, we meet, and we have conversations, and we started supporting one another, and we had young people get into a couple of projects that got them really involved in understanding their race, their culture, and having a very good sense of belonging. And then we realized that, over time, we had parents from outside Leeds who also had peculiar challenges and wanted, to be part of the conversation. So we eventually got ourselves, into webinars and workshops that would support parents and empower parents and families. So at the moment, I would say our services cut across the entire UK, because the challenges is not just unique to Leeds, is unique to diverse communities across the country.
Pedi, it looked like you wanted to add something there, so I'm just going to come back to you.
Yes, no, thank you very much for that, Simon. Indeed, I was going to add something. When Bunmi was answering the question about why you got into this, I had spoken about it a bit, but I also wanted to just add that.
Oh, no, you've frozen. Hopefully she'll come back in a second. Give it a minute. I'm going to move on, but if she comes back, we'll go back to that question. Yeah. Hopefully she will be able to rejoin. The worst thing, your video froze briefly then. The worst thing is when it freezes. Oh, she's gone.
She's back.
Then you can still hear.
No, she's gone off. So,
so that she potentially could still hear us talking, but can't do anything. That's the worst one.
Yeah.
So what are we on? How do you get into it? So Well, one of the things that I was going to
Yeah.
ask, and if Pedi gets back in, I'll ask her as well. So I get the impression from what you're saying, is it largely kind of support in terms of, look, you're not going through this on your own. This is, these are kind of common problems. These are kind of common solutions that we have. Also, we're here for support. Like, are you like resource based where you're sending out materials, or is it more one-to-one, face-to-face kind of emotional support talk shop?
Yeah, initially we started with more or less like a webinar workshops where we have conversations around these issues, because one of the challenges peculiar to diverse communities who are encountering, racial discrimination, stereotyping, and bullying, is the fact that people have taken it as the norm. Is normal for you to go through it, so you have that perception from parents and families that, look, this is part of life, so just get on with it. And the damage there is when parents have that view, they pass it on to the young ones that, look, you are from this community, or you're a minority, so this is part of life, and just get on with it. So that is damaging in itself, because it limits the children. The children also grow up having such kind of limiting behaviors, and also feel a bit isolated in a way, and just feel, okay, this is a problem that I need to deal with in a way. So we started with conversations to really, really understand, what the challenges are, and what people's views are when it comes to the issues around race. I bet race should be one that should bring positivity and beauty. Cultural identity should be the one that should bring, positivity and beauty into any society. It shouldn't bring negativity, as it were. So that perception needs to change. And so we started having workshops, webinars, and we realized that a whole lot of issues stem from the views of people, and we needed to have that conversation and open it up for people to be able to, feel comfortable talking about it. So that was the first. I think the first year, that was what that was our strategy. And as time went on, we started having parents opening up, and then having more detailed conversation, one-on-one. And it's quite interesting to then start seeing parents now, wanting to speak out or speak up, as it were, and wanting to really speak about their challenges and seek support. And like I mentioned earlier, issues around race is one people easily internalize, because they see it as, this is part of life. But it has a damaging effect on, their emotional and social well-being. So one of the things, we also want to do is, aside signposting parents for, providing resources, we are also providing interventions, signposting parents to where they can get further support, or where we can break those barriers, cultural or racial barriers, break it, make it easier for parents to access resources, support. If you're going through any mental, challenges, there are available support there. And if there are barriers to it, we also, provide, support in that areas to break those barriers and ensure that, parents are fully empowered to be able to support their children. So in a way, to answer your question, we've moved from, the old conversation workshops and webinars. We've moved into intervention. We've moved into, one-on-one support, addressing specific and unique challenges. And we've moved seriously into community empowerment as well. So empowering leaders as well in those communities to be able to provide support to young people, and be that, build that whole community sense of belonging, where young people also feel empowered and feel, included, and feel that their voices are heard and seen as well. Yeah.
Excellent. Pedi, welcome
Oh,
back.
is she back?
Hopefully you can hear us.
Yeah, I am back. And I can hear you. I don't know. I think I just dropped off. So I had to log out and then log back in.
So, yeah, I'm going to throw back over to you then. Can you remember where we were? Because I've forgotten the question, how I phrased it
Yes,
to you.
I didn't hear Yeah, no, I didn't hear the question. Bumi was just
Okay, so we were
answering.
just
I
talking
was going to
about,
add
yeah, so
something to the
if
previous.
you add that bit, but we were just talking about the kind of like how the work is delivered and what sort of work you're there to do. So yeah, we were just talking about the kind of resources that you're using. But yes, yeah, I'll throw back to you.
Okay. No, excellent. I was just going to talk about add something to the how I got into this bit. I think one thing that stood out really clearly when I had the first conversation with Bumi was that we had had similar experiences and maybe even responses to similar challenges. The first time we spoke, because I'd had cost to go into school, for instance. I've got two kids, but younger than Bumi's, so I've got a 9-year old and a 3-year old, and I'd had cost going to school for the 9-year old, then younger, because there had been a few incidents that we weren't too comfortable with, and it had to do with her, the way she looks being different, and the reactions she was getting, and maybe even the messaging, you know, through the curriculum as
Mm,
well. And one of the things that stood out for me was that it wasn't always because people meant any harm, but sometimes it was just because that's what people knew.
mm,
And so I thought it was better to come from the point of saying, okay, there's something different out there, and this is what it is, and then have those conversations. And when Bumi introduced AfriKindness and what it does, I just thought excellent, because it provided a platform where I didn't have to go into each school myself, but I could be part of this network where there will be different people going into different schools, and just carrying on the message in very similar ways, but at different times in different places. And I thought that was a more powerful way of doing it. So that was another reason why I thought, why not? And just to add to the other bits, which I think I met the end of when Bumi was answering in terms of how we do it. Another thing is, I don't know if Bumi's mentioned this already, is we do a lot of co-production as
mm,
well. And so Bumi mentioned signposting parents to resources and getting support for them and things like that. But again, the other side of it is that sometimes those resources aren't suited to their unique contexts, their perspectives or their experiences. And very often that's what creates the
mm,
disconnect. So you've got services, you've got resources, you've got people who need those services and resources, but they're just not
mm,
engaging. And sometimes it just takes building a
mhm,
bridge, linking the resources to the people, but also providing the resources in a form that is accessible
mhm,
to those people, and not just accessible in terms of reading and writing, but accessible in terms of the content and the messaging and how it reflects their realities, their context, and their perspectives as well. And so we've recently gone through a safeguarding training
mhm,
process as part of the community empowerment program. We had the safeguarding training, and of course, I'm sure you're no stranger to all the tensions between communities and social services, for instance, when it
mhm,
comes to child protection and
mm,
those kinds of things. And so we thought this is an area where we can do something. And so we went through the basic safeguarding training, and we thought, well, we've gone through this, but there's something missing, which is the cultural dimension. And so we worked with volunteer action leads and community leaders from select communities across Leeds,
mhm,
both faith based and other organizations. And we co produced a new safeguarding training,
mhm,
which has now been. It's been delivered successfully in at least two communities across Leeds,
mhm,
and there are other sessions planned. And so that's a very practical example of the way we do it in terms of co-producing. So taking the existing resources, trying to understand where the gaps are,
mm,
why people aren't using them, especially people from the communities that we service or we work with, trying to get them into those conversations where they feel like they can be part of it, they can lend their voice to the process, getting their voices in that process, co producing new resources that reflect their voices, their perspectives, their priorities, and then empowering those community leaders to be able to deliver those trainings to their communities.
mhm,
Because we also don't want the case of let's go and do it for them. No,
mhm,
it's let's work with them, empower them, to an extent where they feel enabled to do it for themselves.
Mhm.
Because I think that's a more powerful message. Because if you even think about it, it's one thing to deliver the training, it's another thing to deliver a training that suits the needs of the community. And then it's another thing for that community to think that this is a training that is for them.
Mm.
And it's a training that they can be proud of, that they will engage with, they will own, and they will be able to amplify.
Mm. Yeah. And plus you can then sell that as a selling point. Like we have been involved, been consulted, there's been input. You can put input in,
Precisely.
and encouraging that dialogue and contribution. Yeah. Moving us into questions, but with the COVID question, I mean, it's not, with being 2 years old, AfriKindness, I don't know how relevant it is, but what might be relevant is, rather than looking at the lockdown, feel free to share lockdown stories or discuss anything COVID related that you want to here. But yeah, in terms of AfriKindness, because I imagine it's still an issue. I imagine you're still dealing with COVID on a level, because we all are to a degree. So yeah, what from a kind of COVID perspective what kind of effect has that had on AfriKindness?
I'll just
Oh, sorry, yeah, I didn't say who, so I'll start with you, Bunmi.
Right. I think when AfriKindness started, I mean, before AfriKindness was birthed, when COVID hit everyone, I think there were key challenges within the Black and minority ethnic communities when it came to, the support available and the whole, support available for the Black community. And I think that also was one of the factors that also birthed AfriKindness, because it was so obvious at the time, the huge gaps within the system and the systemic, challenges when it comes to the support available for minoritized communities. And in a way, it's impacted our work eventually when AfriKindness got started. Because it's also taught us to, be resilient and at the same time, adapt fully in terms of our services and our, what we offer to families. And it also highlighted the urgency in terms of our mission in supporting families and communities to, to address these complex challenges, challenges that span from, mental health struggles to, challenges, strained relationships with, parents and young people. One of the challenges that also came out so glaring then was the, challenges with neurodiverse families, especially families who have, special needs children. One of the key issues we are trying to address is especially from families who have migrated into the UK. When it comes to neurodiversity, is a very new area. I know there is a lot of awareness going on, but there is still much more that needs to be done in communities, especially when you have, migrant families that have come from, different parts of the world where such kind of awareness is not at the very peak. In the UK, yes, it is, and the support system is there. But when you look at, some different environments outside the UK, that's a total different, story entirely. So when you have people migrating into the UK, you want to provide as much information, as much support, as possible. And, that whole process, that journey highlighted, the urgency of our mission and really, really made it very, very obvious that there is need for us to, start, supporting families and empowering families, to be able to do the needful for their young people, and not just families, but also addressing these systemic challenges as well. So we have a research arm of AfriKindness that helps in terms of surveys and helps, to engage key stakeholders, organizations, government bodies, and on some of the, challenges, some of the issues that parents are having, especially parents that have moved, from different parts of the world. It's also made an impact in terms of, obviously, we transitioned into our programs online. So we did a lot of online engagements. And I think that's, is nationally, that is one that had an impact on everyone. So everyone moved into the Zoom atmosphere and, started hosting webinars. So it's one that we had to pick up as quickly as possible and get, workshops on a virtual note so that we can continue providing support to parents and providing support online as well. In a way, it has impacted our work, and on a positive note, it has helped us to adapt and to really be able to provide our services, not just within the UK. I think we've had people even outside the UK, families outside the UK utilize our services. We have had, people, utilizing our resources from Africa, we've had people joining our webinars from Canada, from the US and other parts of the world as well. So it's just to, let you see how, technology has also evolved and helped us reach, much more people beyond Leeds as well.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm thinking that surely some of the seeds of AfriKindness were, I mean, at the very least, that process of lockdown did, we've already talked about normalization, but like that did normalize being online, working online, all of that. So that must have been, I don't know how much you were working remotely before, but that must have been kind of present in mind of like, I can, the people that we can reach and the effect that we can have is huge now.
Absolutely. When we started obviously in Leeds, physically meeting with parents, doing workshops in locations, and eventually when we moved online, our first set of Zoom webinars, we had several technical, issues and all, but we've grown, over the years, and as time went on, our services, our workshops, our webinars now online is been, we have people, joining in from across the globe, actually, joining some of our webinars. When we did our podcast, when we launched our podcast, my goodness, I think the podcast reached close to, I think, 4 continents. We had, people streaming from Australia, as far as Australia as well, which was quite interesting to see. And it just also buttress the point that the issues and the conversations we are having is one that is quite unique, is one that people want to, get into, have an open space and a safe space, really, to be able to engage in such kind of conversation and be able to see how best, people can open up about the challenges they are having when it comes to the issues around complex racial issues and all. Yeah. So the impact has been, to say, beyond Leeds, beyond UK and across the globe. Yeah.
And beyond your expectations.
Absolutely
hopefully.
Beyond my expectation. This year, I mean, we posted on social media that we got an award from Zurich Insurance. This year alone, we've had 3 awards for AfriKindness, and we put out one today. And when I saw the social media post, I didn't know what to write as a comment, and the first thing that came that I wrote was, "Oh my God." That was the only thing I could write. That this is, this is I don't know what adjective to use, but is mind-blowing, is one that has picked up, and I'm just grateful to the volunteers, the team of volunteers that are giving their whole, their passion, their, their skills, their experience, their time into this, and ensuring that, conversations are had, families are supported, we're breaking barriers, we're addressing, some of the complex challenges, and just paving way for an inclusive society, which I think is one that we all want, really, to see. And just ensuring that the younger generation are not living in that zone of fear, but are able to, feel empowered to be the best version of themselves, irrespective of wherever they're from, and their race isn't a limiting factor to that. Is one that, should empower them really to, your uniqueness as a person. One of the key things we often say, and I think it's one of the key watchwords for a sentence for AfriKindness, is that identity is an act of empowerment. And once you have that strong sense of identity, I mean, you can do anything. And that strong sense of identity is really, really what we're pushing out for, ensuring that is positive for young people. And I think that's what our mission is, fostering that positive racial identity development. So we put it as a development because it's a journey. It's a journey of self-awareness, self-development. It's a journey that every, child will go through. The difference here between a child from a diverse community and another child is that's complexity of race. And if children and young people are able to navigate that whole complexity and have that strong sense of, identity, that strong sense of self, you can become, anything you want to be, and you won't have that whole limiting issues or low self-esteem or low confidence issues, but that you really are thriving and, you're being part of a society. You have that sense of belonging and you're contributing your own quota, fully, not in any way, reduced, but fully to the best interest of the society. Yeah. So, yeah.
Cool. So Pedi, so I'm not going to go back on that and build on that further, but I'm going to build on that with you, hopefully, Pedi. So, we'll do a bit on COVID first. Obviously, I'll give you a chance to respond to that. So if there's anything you want to add on that front, or if there's anything that you want to bring in that's COVID related, feel free. And then as well, I guess what I was going to say is there's obviously a lot of demand for it. From what Bunmi said and like the podcast success, and it sounds like you've grown quite quickly over a short period of time. You've had good positive feedback in terms of awards and stuff. So the demand's there, so feel free to talk about that bit, and anything that you want to add about COVID, feel free to add that in there as well, please.
Thank you. I think it's not much to add about COVID. What I was going to say there is, personally for me, because I started my job in Bradford during COVID. So that in itself made me think that it could be effective to work with parents and communities online, because I'd seen it happen even in my day job. And COVID was also an opportunity in my day job for us to introduce some new ways of teaching and learning. So, for instance, we launched our distance learning program for masters, the law masters, and it's been very successful, linked to this idea of it's COVID. People are used to doing things online, and we can build on that for learning and teaching. And so, for AfriKindness, I just thought, because I'd had that experience of working online so much as a result of COVID, and I'd grown to see COVID and the opportunities it sort of presented in some ways for trying out new things, using technology as a resource for expanding services, providing support to people. That has also informed my approach to programming for AfriKindness as well. That thing of saying, yes, I don't live in Leeds, for instance, but that shouldn't be a problem. We've got volunteers who don't live in Leeds. Some have never stepped foot in Leeds, but have been doing really serious work, from various parts of the country. And like Bumi mentioned, we've had people engage with our webinars and our resources online all the way from the US, Canada, all sorts of places. And so that in itself has been a good experience. Another thing that I don't know how much of this is down to COVID, but I think perhaps there's a connection. I feel like with COVID, people became a bit more aware of mental health and the importance of it, and also for children, because children were away from school. They were away from their routines. Children who would have after school, I don't know, anything at all, they were away from all of that, and they were just at home. And I think that provided an opportunity for everyone to sort of pause and start to pay a bit more attention to that element of it, in terms of how are the children and young people coping What do we need to do for them? We can't just send them off to football. We can't send them off to clubs and all that anymore. Now we have them with us at home. So what can we do? What do we need to do to equip ourselves as parents and guardians to be able to provide that support for them? But also, how can we take care of ourselves as well as parents and as guardians? So one of the things that we're really big on for our parents team is self-care, because we think that if the parents aren't in a good position, if the guardians aren't in a good place themselves, they'll just lash out on the children. They can't provide support for the children. And the other thing is, children imitate a lot. I think children learn mimicking. They just mimic what we do as adults. And so if as an adult you're not well regulated, you don't have it all together, of course you don't have to be perfect, but at least try, in a way that provides a good example for the children and young people around us, then that becomes even an issue in itself. So we I think with all that, COVID sort of made it more glaring that these are issues to be addressed, and that has informed the programming for AfriKindness as well. So it's provided us with a real, almost like a real reason, which people, you don't have to, is an easy sell, because everyone experienced it, everyone saw it happen, and it's become easier to pass that message on to communities and say, look, we need to do something about this, because each of them, each of these communities, each of these families, in one way or the other, experience these issues as well.
Okay, Bunmi, do you want to add anything to that, or shall I move us on to the next question?
Yeah, I think I'm fine.
Okay. Just give you the opportunity there. So next question, we'll do Brexit. I don't know if this will be relevant at all, but I'll put the question to you, see if it, and again, you can use your day job if that, if there's anything that you want to sort of add from that perspective. But since we have Brexited in 2021, has it changed your work at all? Have you noticed any change in?
I can't even remember when that happened.
I'll take that as a no.
Yeah,
Pedi?
I think I would say it hasn't, not directly, because the focus
Yeah.
for AfriKindness is on children within the UK and children from Black minority ethnic communities. And so that hasn't changed at all. It's the focus is still the same. Even when we have to do things overseas, it's not physical events, so we haven't really had to go into other parts of Europe, for instance, and we haven't had to do things like registration or any formal work that has required, I don't know, signing up for things or seeing if there have been any changes due to the change in the laws and all that. So I would say not directly.
Does climate change affect your work? I'm going to start with you again, Bunmi, on this one. So climate change, how does that affect your work if it does?
In terms of AfriKindness, is one of the key areas that we're looking at as well, especially when it comes to young people, because it's one that affects everyone, including children and young people. And for the future, we just need to get children involved, even as of now, especially, for the future. So one of the key priorities, or is a focus areas, let me call it focus areas. Like Pedi did say, we have kindness to oneself, we have kindness to others, we have kindness to the environment, and by extension, we have kindness to Africa. So that's why we have the name AfriKindness, kindness to Africa. So we have some services that we provide to Africa, as it were, as well. So those are the 4 focus areas that we use in terms of engaging young people, because we feel kindness in itself is one that children, irrespective, a 5-year-old can easily understand what kindness is. I think everyone wants, kindness in a way. You just want people to be kind to you. So we use that, conversation in schools when engaging young people, to be kind to yourself, which is linked to, your mental well-being, your, how you view yourself, your self-awareness and all that, and kindness to others in terms of your interaction with other people, respect for other people, respect for other cultures and race and all. And then kindness to the environment. Yeah. So that is where we then have conversations around, your immediate environment, which is also part of, your development, is part of, who you are, because your environment, would determine a lot.
Yeah.
So we engage in a lot of activities, encouraging children to start saying sustainable ways protecting our planet, which is the only one that we've got. And I think Pedi will talk more because we've had several conversations. We had a webinar recently on climate change.
Mm-hmm.
So she'll probably talk more as regards to those conversations with parents and, what we've done and what we're looking at doing in the future for parents in terms of climate resilience, adaptability, and possibly, conversations with young people on climate change. But in terms of my personal views, let's not go there. I'll leave that to Pedi.
Okay, Pedi, your turn to add through that.
Yeah, no, I mean, climate change I think is front and center. I mean, I'd mentioned it at the beginning. I mentioned that I teach climate change.
Mhm.
I teach climate change law and policy. I'm also a town councillor, and I chair the committee on climate emergency and environment in my town, my parish. So
This
it's
is a
something
big
I'm
part of
very
your work,
passionate.
really.
Yeah, it's something I'm very passionate about. But of course, it's something that everyone sort of has an opinion about one way or the other. And for me, it's really about having those conversations. Let's have them,
Yeah.
because one of the things you find is that a lot of the times there's no diversity in the conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of people talking about it, but you'll find that it's the same set of people talking about it in one space, and then you look down the road and a completely different set of people.
Yeah,
I can
and
see
in
your
the
face,
same
Simon.
way, it's just like, and there's no nuance in the message, is there? It's
Not at
just like
all.
Yes.
you get like 4 or 5 message sets, and it's like these are the 2 that are for, and these are the 2 that are against, and this is the middle one. And it's like
Precise.
that's not how people work.
And that's not how the environment works. It doesn't sort
No,
of
it's not how
rain or
anything
not.
works,
Yeah,
apart from corporate marketing machines.
precisely. Precisely. So, if we go back to when I started and I say, what does law do? How can we make
Mm,
things different? So for
mhm,
me, that's what it's about. So within AfriKindness context, it's about saying, well, children from these communities can have these conversations as well. They can be part of these conversations. They have a perspective that is
mhm,
probably unique, but
mhm,
not reflected enough. So, how
mm,
do we get these as part of the everyday conversation? How do we get people comfortable? How do we even get people to say, okay, well, it's worth my time and efforts because it's not a them problem, it's an us problem, and we
mhm,
can collectively reach a solution. The other thing we're trying to do is to also take it from the perspective of, like it or not, it is happening and it is affecting people. And sometimes even the messaging is affecting people negatively, especially
mhm,
young people and
mm,
children, because children go into schools, they get some message. They listen to the TV or they watch TV, they get some message. They listen to the radio, they get a message. Everywhere around them, there are lots of messages around climate change. So, what we're trying to do is to say to parents, this is a conversation you need to be a part of. You first need to understand it well enough to relate it to your context and then be able to provide the support for your child or young person because they will be stressed if you don't support them. It's stressful enough thinking that, I mean, sometimes you have, I don't know, really young children say, you know what, no one should drive a car because cars are bad. But you can think about what it's doing to that child if the very next morning the parent is, oh, hop in the car, let's go somewhere. It's mixed messaging, it's confusing messaging.
mm,
They can't make sense of it if
mm,
we don't sit them down and just have a proper conversation that's well rounded
mm,
about the intricacies, the nuances, as you were mentioning, the context, and how it affects us in our everyday. So that's what we're trying to do as a way of reducing the anxiety for children and young people, but
mhm,
also enabling them so that they feel empowered and they can actually contribute to the solutions as well. So that's how we're
mm,
trying to do it. Like Bunmi mentioned, we had the webinar. I think that was in November.
mhm,
We had a webinar on, we called it Climate Change 101 for Parents. But as we mentioned previously, sometimes we work with parents as a way to reach children. We also do that with schools. So that was another way of just working with parents as a way of reaching children and young people. And as part of that conversation, we had 2 town councillors, we had climate action leads, and we
mm,
also had a youth climate activist. So just trying to give a rounded discussion, different perspectives. Of course, we could do more in terms of having more voices. And so we're trying to see if we could also get support in terms of funding, where we can have like a proper training setup where people can go through the training and possibly even get the training accredited as well, so that people can also get some form of certification for going through the training. So those are the kinds of things we're trying to work on in 2025.
Cool. Bunmi, do you need to add anything further to that?
Oh, I'm happy with whatever Dr. Pedi says.
Okay.
She is the climate expert.
So I shall social media. So let's do the social media question. I'm going to start with Pedi this time. So this question, what I want to look at here is return on investment for the time that you put into it. So in terms of doing work social media, or again, you can think of this in your day-to-day role or purely for AfriKindness, but how much time do you need to put into, or how much time do you put into posts and social media, and does it give you the return on investment that you want? I'm not going to bias this answer this time. Does it give you the return on investment that you want? Are you getting the results out of it that you want for the effort you put in?
I mean, to be honest, Bunmi is the social media person. I hardly spend time on social media. I don't spend as much time as I should, I guess. But from where I sit, I would say it is a lot of time, but it's also a lot of results. Because on the one hand, and it is a lot of time because this is all, again, like I mentioned at the beginning, volunteer led.
Oh no, she's froze. She'll come back. Damn it.
Will that have an impact, or are you going
we
to?
could cut it out. We just short.
Okay.
Okay. We can leave it in for authenticity if we want. Are you back?
Yes,
I can see you.
I was
Yes.
almost going to leave and then come back in, but I was just saying, it is a lot of it takes a lot of time, and like I mentioned at the beginning, because it's volunteer led. Of course, you can imagine what that means in terms of everything that's on social media is being done by volunteers, the graphics, the messaging, and having to respond to the comments as well. So it's all on volunteer time. But having said that, it is very important because on the one hand, social media, I think it's both a demand and a supply thing. On the one hand, social media shows the need because you go online and you just see what's happening, not only in Leeds, but all around. In fact, I remember when we had the riots in Leeds, was it in one of the communities that had to do with social services and children being
It's
taken away
Hare
and things?
Hills.
Yes, it was in Hare Hills. I first heard on social media. That's how I saw it.
Yeah.
So it's that thing where through social media you can see the need within your community and in other places as well. And so by similar token, through social media, you can also provide the resources and the support to an even wider audience. The other thing about social media is, to be fair, it's not always good. I must say, there are times when you see some comments on social media and it's not complimentary. There's backlash. The people who are not happy with what we're doing, because I mean, it's all part of the negative energy we're trying to push back against. So it's just acknowledging that it has its uses. I think it's been very beneficial, but at the same time, it also has its risks. There's a high level of exposure, because sometimes I'm thinking, oh, when we do this, for me, everyone sort of sees your name, they see your face, and you could easily become the problem, if you see what I mean. And nobody wants that. But I think it's about saying, well, yes, but it's something that needs to be done. It's coming from a good place, and so you just do what you need to do as best as you can.
Yeah. Bunmi, social media, what are your thoughts and feelings on that, and how much time you have to spend on it?
Okay. I would probably look at it on two different harms. One is on the positive impact. Social media has had a transformative impact on AfriKindness as a whole, because it has enabled us to amplify our message, and in a very good way across not just in Leeds or in the UK and globally as well. And it has helped us to really increase our reach as well. So on a positive note, social media is really helping to really get that conversation going, to help increase our reach and help in our messaging as well. It helps us connect with people. There are people that, engages with our content, with, join our webinars from across the, globe, and social media has helped us in terms of connecting with those diverse, audiences everywhere. And it's also a platform for us to, share our resources, all our content, our resources. That's the only platform we've got. We also use email marketing as well, but social media is one that you can easily get people immediately. Once you post it, you start seeing reaction, you start seeing the CTR coming in, you start seeing the click rates and all. So people are engaging with your content, and you're making that needed impact really. So on a positive note, yes, we're using social media to reach parents, to reach young people, to reach schools. We recently did a cultural project in schools, and we did a competition in schools that relates to culture. It's called Africa Awareness Week Art Competition, and we did that this year, and we had winners, and we had to publicize that through social media, and had several schools participate in that, which was very good to see. Schools really engaging, wanting, to get, cultural awareness, that conversation going on in their school environment. That's what we want to see. That's the message we want to pass across as well. So social media has given us that space to be able to, celebrate cultural diversity, engage in conversation, reach people that on a normal note, we probably won't even know, where they are, but we getting through to different corners of the world. Yeah, so that's on the positive note. I probably must also add that on the positive note is also helping us to address those negative information or that's misinformation, and helping us really put out the right messaging when it comes to the issues around race. So that's one. AfriKindness our focus is on children and young people. And when it comes to the digital world, it has its own impact on children and young people on a negative, aspect. And a lot of times children spend, young people spend a lot of time on, social media, and they get to see those wrong messages. And what we're working against now is against time, trying to get through to these young people before they get to see, negative information out there, and before it starts having that damaging effect on them. So we see ourselves also trying to use that same social media to counter those negative narrative, which young people often see. When it comes to, I remember vividly when we had the George Floyd issue. I know a lot of parents from diverse community would have had difficult conversations during that period with their young people, because before I could say, my kids already knew the story. And it was one that I couldn't even understand how to process.
Yeah. Or start having as well.
Exactly. So
with a child.
Within a child, you then see a child who already knows the story, has picked it up from social media, is all over the place. And you as, the mom or the adult or the parents, you're wondering, okay, how do I then sit this child down and help, this child process this information without having a damaging effect? Because what you see happen, especially with young people, is when they see messages to do with race, they don't want to have that conversation. They already know what it is and the negative aspect to it, and they internalize it. I have my son who is quite is very into himself, so he internalizes a lot of things and processes a lot of things, before speaking out. And what we want to try to do is, a race against time. You want to try to make sure that before young people start, processing and having that damaging effect based on all these negative, narratives out there and stories and things, and we're able to push forward a positive angle to it and help parents have that conversation before it starts affecting or influencing negatively on the mental health or emotional well-being of young people. So on the negative side, yes, there are information out there, negative one that is affecting the young people that we're targeting. But we have a lot of work to do as an organization and from a parent angle to ensure that parents really are empowered and we're not just sitting down having our children go through life as it were based on what they see and what they hear and just leaving them to deal with it, but that we are really supporting them through that whole phase and helping them see counter those messaging, but helping them see positive light into everything happening in our society. I don't know if that answers.
No, it's a good answer. I mean, I'm thinking as well. Would it be fair to say that you try to be really responsive? Like, because it could very easily be quite didactic of like, we've discovered these things. We are the knowledge keepers. Here's the knowledge. Have it. Like it seems very, like you were saying, Pedi, with co-productions, like it's very much collaborative, lots of feedback gathering and kind of, contemplating it. Like Bunmi's nodding away here. Is so, I mean, I guess that's the way it's working and the way you've designed it. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. If I can just add to that, indeed, when we have the webinars or any other sessions with parents or with schools, and especially with parents and community leaders, we never say this is what you have to do
Yeah.
or this is the right way to do it. In fact, it's one of the conversations we have. We've had situations where we've said to ourselves, oh no, we don't want the speaker because this person is just saying do this and do that. And that's not what we want. We don't have a position on this. What we want is for the speaker to come as an expert and say, this is the evidence. And then let the parents or communities make up their minds for themselves and let them understand the implications of whatever decisions they take, one way or the other, and how to navigate that process. So that's one thing we're really big on. The other thing I was going to add is that in understanding the risks with social media and indeed with technology, but also understanding the power it has and the potential it has, we're trying to make the most of both worlds, as it were. So we do run online safety as part of our offerings to parents. Also because Bumi talked about racing against time and almost like, oh, we're trying to support the young people. A lot of the times in fact, they know more than we
Yes.
do. And I think it's almost like we are trying to play catch up.
Yeah.
You
You're
know,
learning from them.
indeed, yes. While trying to pretend like we know what we're doing and what we're saying.
It's more like, how are you protecting yourself? And then we can move that. We can tell other people to do that.
Exactly. Exactly. So one of the things we do is to run online safety as part of our key offering to parents, but also to teenagers, young people as well. And in fact, one of the things we say to parents is, yes, there are all sorts of approaches out there. There are all sorts of apps out there, but you have to be mindful of the consequences of what you choose to do. So, for instance, if you decided, oh, I'm going to monitor everything the child does and not let them know I'm monitoring them, you need to understand what the implications could be in terms of trust building if the child finds out and things like that. Could there be other approaches to explore? These are other approaches. So it's up to you what you choose to do, but just be mindful that there are consequences one way or the other. The other thing we're trying to do is, as part of the community empowerment, there's a module on digital inclusion. And if we're able to get the support that we're trying to get for that one, it will be again to provide resources to communities and parents who are not digitally savvy or maybe don't even understand just the basics of it. Not like we're trying to get them to become tech gurus, but just to understand the basics of it. Because the truth about it is, without digital awareness in today's world, you're already excluded from so many things. And so we're trying to support communities with just those basic tools and resources to be able to navigate the digital world as a way of supporting themselves, but also the children and young people in their care better.
I mean, is digital divide stuff, is that a factor in the communities that you're working with? Yeah.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
for instance, we use Eventbrite, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
to register for programs, and even the QR code.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes
sorry.
just getting just getting people to when you say, "Oh, scan the QR code," some people don't understand what that is. So you can that's an issue.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be as basic as that. But if you think about it, it then means if, for instance, the NHS is putting out information and saying scan this QR code, people
Yeah.
don't know what that means.
Yeah.
And so that's a problem. Or if you're saying, oh, the forms are online, just go and download it. Some people don't understand what you mean by that.
Yeah.
Or if you say, oh, it's a PDF, but you can actually type on a PDF, they're looking at you thinking, what does that mean? So it sounds really basic, and I think that's the danger of it, because for those who know, it's so commonplace,
Yeah.
and so you don't even think about
But
it.
it's assumptions based. I've said this hundreds of
Precisely.
times on the podcast, but the like you could see this in COVID. Like when they first did the lockdown, they were just like, right, everybody just stay in your house, and then it was kind of like a bit of a penny dropped of like, oh, that can't happen. Some people have to go out and do stuff. Okay, well,
Precisely.
you will all stay. These people can come out. Oh, we need them as well. Oh, do you know what I mean? It's that sort of slow realization of, oh, not everybody works in an office.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, sometimes people just assume everyone has internet at home.
Yeah, yeah.
Nope.
Like we all do the same thing, and it's
Yeah.
all the same for all of us. Yeah.
Just to add to what Pedi said, I just wanted to highlight the community empowerment program that launched this year. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess Pedi has said a bit about the empowerment program, and it covers 7 modules that we're offering to parents, and it's all about empowering parents. Why we looked at those 7 models are key issues or challenges that often parents do often face when it comes to parenting along the parenting journey, and majority of the time you often have cultural barriers associated with those key areas. So the first one is safeguarding, which obviously Pedi had mentioned, and you know fully well the issues around social services and the complexities around when it comes to safeguarding children and what it really means, especially for diverse communities, because the rule that applies in the UK is completely different from other areas. And when you have parents coming into the UK, not having that all full information,
Mm-hmm.
they tend not to understand what to do when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
safeguarding or child protection. So one of the models is safeguarding. The other one is mental health. There's a huge gap when it comes to understanding mental health in itself, and the whole is quite a broad area, and how parents needs to navigate when it comes to support and resources on mental health, and it has an impact on young people as well. And then the third is neurodiversity, which I also mentioned. So we provide services when it comes to children with special needs as well. And there is a huge cultural barriers when it comes to navigating that whole process in terms of diagnosis and assessment. So that's another model that we're looking at in terms of empowering parents. Then we have self-care. I think Pedi mentioned about self-care as well. They're the key issues when it comes to self-care when parents are not able to really you know offer that all self care to themselves, then it has an impact on how the parents, the young people. Then I think the fifth one is on digital inclusion. So we have an expert on digital inclusion we've talked about. The other one is which one is it now? I've forgotten what. I think we have 2 more. Social services, how we interact with social services from
Mm-hmm.
diverse community, and understanding, what social services is and what they do.
Yeah.
I think the perception around who they are is completely different in some communities. And I think the last one is, what's the last one now? Pelican.
Parenting with purpose.
Parenting with purpose, and that's actually looks at parenting as a whole, and the all issues around cultural views when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
parenting, because our parenting style differs. Some
Mm-hmm.
parents based on their experiences, Some parents, based on how they've seen their journey in terms of their personal journey. Some parents, parenting could be based on their the traumatic experience that they've had in the past, and they pass it on, intergenerational experiences, and they pass it on.
Or a strong reaction to that of like, I am
Exactly.
definitely not going to be like this, and then you're really uptight
Exactly.
and you're a different problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is a model on parenting with purpose, and really ensuring that parents have that positive experience when in their parenting journey. So that's the 7 models that we're currently looking at in the empowerment program.
Bunmi, do you think a UBI how do you think it might affect your work?
I mean, we work with families, and it spans from families from all walks of lives, and we have families who are really struggling, and really in itself. Families who have probably just migrated into the UK and needs a bit of footing around, settling in the UK in itself. And I think with the UBI coming into play, would really help, families, really, especially those that are struggling financially. So I think, is one that would also help our work as well, because majority of the time we're working with parents, the first point of call you want to understand from a parent's perspective, or want to understand the parent's situation, is to understand where they are in terms of financially, if they're okay, if they're stable, because majority of the time when parents have when people have mental health challenges, sometimes the root cause could be when it comes to
It's financial stresses, huge.
situation.
Yeah.
And so we try to understand the broader aspect of the challenges that parents are having, and understand how best support. So I think having that basic income could really help in terms of settling families. And then it could also help in terms of emergencies, because sometimes situations happen, life happens to people. You could be this at this particular point in time, and then in the nearest couple of months things happen unexpectedly, and having such kind of income could really help, especially in those difficult times, for you to really adjust, and get yourself and your families sorted. And for children and young people as well, could be something very useful for families, during unexpected difficulties or situations. Could be one that could be really give families that leverage to be able to support and help their families go through any difficulties at the time. So I think is a very good idea, if he's still in an idea phase.
Yeah. But I again, I think it's one that needs to be more widely debated. And there are people who will go from everything of like, oh, it's really easy, or it's you have to be printing your own currency, or you have to spend it in a particular way, or there's lots of different ways of doing it. But the fact of the matter is, if we're supposed to be a democracy, we have the debate about it, and people want it. It should be done. End of story. That's my opinion. Again, we're not here to hear that. So I'll move to Pedi, who I am here to hear the opinion from.
No, I mean, thanks for letting us think through this with you. What I would say is, like Bumi has mentioned, a lot of it's a diverse range of parents we work with. Some of them have been in the UK, some of them are new to the UK, and just different situations. And I think the UBI would have different implications for them as a result of that. Bumi has mentioned that the fact that even in terms of economic status, some might be better off than others. And of course, there are no guarantees in life. Situations change for people. But one of the things I would say is for families that are new to the UK, a lot of them are not eligible for public funds. And so even if there was a UBI, it would depend on the parameters in terms of their eligibility. On the other hand, what you find is that they make a contribution in terms of the health surcharge, for instance, which is very often lots of money that is calculated based on how many family members are coming in and things like that. So they make contributions to the NHS and things like that. So I think it would depend. I don't think it's easy at this point to know what the implications would be for those families until we know the details of the payment. So in principle, of course, it's always good to provide a support for those who need it the most. And I think that's what life should be, that we're there to support each other as and when needed. And based on the principle that those who need it the most should get more. So it's more about equity than equality per se. Just trying to be sure that we're providing the most support for those who need it the most. But I think at the same time, the form it takes and the way it is presented, the eligibility criteria would determine how it benefits the families, and it would depend on the demographics of those families as well in terms of the implications for the work that AfriKindness does. And I would say that interestingly, the demographics keeps changing. We have started out, I was spoken a lot about focusing on children from Black minority ethnic communities. But the other thing that AfriKindness does is that we say everybody needs to be part of that conversation. So we're not excluding, because we need everybody to be part of that conversation. We need to understand why people do what they do and why they don't do what they don't do. And to do that, it's not enough to just speak to only one set of people, but we need to widen that conversation and have everybody come into the room as well. So I think that then means that even in terms of the families that we're supporting, you may be seeing some changes, some dynamics that look a bit different from where we've started from. And that in itself is a good thing, because it just means that we're reaching a wider audience and we're building a stronger network of people united despite whatever differences they might have, and coming together for a similar cause, which is just ensuring that children and young people are in an environment where they can thrive and be the best version of themselves.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that was a very good lawyerly answer.
I'll be sending my charges after this.
So this is the last of my questions. You can be as pragmatic or as fantastical with this as you want. So you can change the world, or you can just change your fax machine, or whatever you want to do. So I'm going to start with you, Bunmi, again. If you could change any three things about your work, what would you change? And you can do AfriKindness and your day job if you want, or just AfriKindness, up to you.
On top of my head, I think AfriKindness is what is if I could change anything, I think one of the key challenges we're having in AfriKindness is access to funding to help us really with the work that we do. So if I have the opportunity to do anything, would be to have, increase funding resources really to help, charity works or charitable organizations or third-party sectors to be able to really make that impact. A lot of organizations like ours work directly with communities. So we are in the community. We're having conversations with parents. We see and we hear, on a daily basis, issues, challenges. And sometimes some of the, issues in terms of how best we can support these families, or to what extent can we do this work, depends largely on, funding resources. So if there's anything I need now in terms of the work that we do as AfriKindness, would be to, have access to funding to be able to support the work that we do.
Okay. First of all, I'm going to interject there and say, well, if anyone wants to donate, how do they do so?
Right on our website, on AfriKindness website, and that's www.afrikindness.org. If you go on that website, I think the first thing you see is donate.
Donate.
And we're very much open to sponsorship opportunities as well. So we do a lot of peculiar projects in communities. So Empowerment Project is one. We also have projects related to young people, Kids Academy. We call it Kids Academy, where we bring mentors and role models to work with these young people and help them, especially for young people who have been excluded from school or who are facing peculiar challenges when it comes to race, complex challenges. We have an academic session where we bring expert coaches and teen coaches that would work directly with these children or young people. So they're peculiar projects. We have the ANCP project, that's the AfriKindness Neurodiversity Community Program, and that's specific to children, young people with special needs, empowering their parents and providing support and resources. That in itself is a complex situation because we're just getting into the community when with awareness, getting that conversation started when it comes to the issues around autism, the whole spectrum. And we really, really need support, when it comes to, really providing signposting parents to where they need to get, help for their children and ensuring that whatever cultural barriers they're having is really addressed. So there are peculiar, projects that, we're seeking funding for that we don't mind, sponsorship opportunities. And, anyone willing to sponsor us can write directly to us at info@afrikindness.org. And we would be most delighted to share our brochures and take that conversation further. Yeah.
Excellent. And all the links will be in the show note. Do you have another two, or are you going to leave it at the one?
I think that's the major thing on my head at the
That's
moment.
the main change. Yeah, money. Give us more money. We can do more work. Give us more money.
Yeah.
Pedi, I can come back to you if you think of any more. But Pedi, what three things might you change about your work if you could?
Well, I would change the focus if I could. I wish we could do other things, that are more fun and exciting for the children and young
Mm.
people. Because at the moment, I feel like, when I think about, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I feel like we're really, really still at
Yeah,
the
the base,
base.
basic needs
Yeah,
being met. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And we're struggling even with
Mm.
that. I wish and hope we're each and closer to that point of self-actualization where
Mm.
we can just, dream something and say, oh, let's do this. And then we have the time and resources to do that.
Mm.
So that's one thing. I think the other thing is, I don't know how this fits in, but I just think about, this idea of being volunteers, voluntary
Mhm.
sector. I just wish it was different. I wish it was valued a bit more
Mm.
in terms of the way people would value shares in a company, if that makes sense. And I think if it was valued differently, perhaps one there'll be more people putting in the time
Mm.
because it then counts for something for them beyond their self actualization or whatever, because
Mm.
people have to pay their bills first before they start to do things for whether it's their ethics or
Mm.
morals or values or self actualization, whatever we want to call
Mhm.
it. And so it's a bit difficult asking people who are volunteering to do more and more and more
Mm.
because they also have these other
Lives
things that
and finite energy and time.
exactly, exactly. But perhaps if there was a way of sort of making their contributions to the voluntary sector
Mm.
count in those other aspects of their lives for
Mm.
them, maybe that could be an added incentive,
Mm.
for them to do more and see it counting for something. And when I think about it just broadly, it leads me to think about, how in the work, feminist work and all that, they talk about social labor, for instance, how much some people do
Mhm.
which they don't get paid
Mhm.
for, but it's work
Yeah.
that they're doing. And sometimes when I think about it, I just think, how fair is this that it's the same people who are having these problems that we're calling upon again
Mm.
to do the work,
Mhm.
because we're going back to the same communities that are struggling with these challenges, and we're saying, well, come on board and let's do
Yeah.
this together. and with lean resources. So in a sense, we're almost doubling the burden on them. But I don't think at the moment we don't have a better model of doing it. So it can't be helped in a sense. But if I could, that's something I would do differently so that it's not the same communities that are on the front lines doing the work again to clear the way. It's some other people saying, well, this is a disservice. Let's do something about it. Let's work with you to make things better.
Thanks to Bunmi and Pedi for being my guests. Thanks, as always, to all my guests, and thanks to you, Leeds, for being my subject. You can find more about AfriKindness at afrikindness.org, and they also have a podcast, which I would recommend checking out. It's afrikindnesspodcast.buzzsprout.com. Link is also in the show notes. Boom! Series 5 is done. Well done, us. Okay, you ready for Series 6? I'm chomping at the bit. If you haven't listened to all 155 episodes, then what are you waiting for? And if you're going to do that, please do it on YouTube so that I can get the watch time, and go and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already, because it's been on 13 for ages and that's just bad luck, isn't it? So go and change that, please. They are good. You will learn stuff. Like, you know, I don't rant all the way through it. It's largely kept to the end when I have gone ranting. Anyway, I also want some input on the idea of adding a 10th question to the interviews. So what do you think it should be? If you'd like to contact me about that or anything else working hours related, then you can email me about the show at workinghourspod@western-studios.com. If you'd like to keep me alive and keep this show going, you can contribute to that as much or as little as you care or can afford to. How? All the typical internet ways: sharing it, appearing on it, following it, paying for it, or buying something else from me. You know the drill. I'm just prompting. If you can help in any of those areas, please do. Please also check my website for more information. And if what you want to know isn't on there, then just drop me an email and I will fix that. Go to western-studios.com to find out more about what I can offer you and your brand and your online presence, etc., etc. Okay, that's me. Remember, listener, no matter what you do, it's impossible for you to understand anything that your salary depends on you not understanding. So try to work for peace and try to plan with kindness. Raise your voice, but reduce your impact. Cheers, ears. Take care out there and be kind to each other, Leeds. Working Hours is produced, recorded, edited and published by Simon Treen for Western Studios, Leeds Limited. The music was The Bees from Chopin's Etudes, which is in the public domain and was taken from museopen.org. Go to western-studios.com and use the contact page on the site to drop me a message about either Working Hours or about your own Leeds podcast project. Keep up to date with Working Hours and find out about the other great Leeds podcasts that Western Studios is involved with by following Western Studios Leeds on Facebook at facebook.com/western_studios_Leeds and on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/company/Western-Studios. Western Studios Leeds is available to loaners to help them realise their own podcast projects for only £30 for an hour of audio podcast work or £40 for an hour of video podcast work. Email makemypodcast at western-studios.com with details of your project and what support you want to get your Leeds podcast made. Whatever your podcast question or need, get in touch with Western Studios Leeds.